these three amazing women here at the symposium. Thanks so much for coming. So here's the way that we're going to do it. There's a few questions. I'm going to try and get out of the way of our panelists as much as possible. Let me introduce the three of them to you. We have CATHRYN BLUM. She'll be speaking first a little bit.
AKA CATBIRD.
AKA CATBIRD. And you can look her official biography up online on the symposium site. I guess I would say that I know her personally through work she's worked on through Hudson's project. She worked with Fluxus Foundation, with the Lotus Girls, with my dear friend Michael Brown on the Dust City Diner. And so just about, well, many art projects. She has been the woman that has chopped wood and carried water behind the scenes of those. And so I think that she has a lot of good things to tell you. The next person sitting there is Pune Mortazavi, and she is the co-founder of the Flaming Lotus Girls, with, among other things, among being an attorney, a mom, an artist in her own right. I think that the reverberations of that organization have gone much further than just Burning Man. And I think when Stuart asked this morning about what will we remember 100 years from now, we'll probably remember the Flaming Lotus Girls as one of the things that came out of that. And then we have, so yes, and you can look up the real, whatever the real biography says on the symposium site. I get to tell you what I do. Thank you. I'm blushing. I'm blushing too, but it's the whiskey top. And finally we have Jess Hobbs, one of our great San Francisco Bay Area artists and instigators of all kinds of things, not just art, but energy projects, many things. A great teacher, a mentor for others, and a co-founder of the Fluxus Foundation. And these are the things that the three ladies are going to talk to us about. So Kat is going to give us a little bit of information about logistics. Of course, we can't learn everything that's in her head, but that'll be your job to ask questions. And then Pune will talk to us about volunteers and running volunteers. And Jess is going to tell us a little bit about team leadership. So Kat worked late into the night to just lay it out there for you. So I thought I'd open up with her. Stuart, or someone talked about the wizards behind the curtain, and that's a little bit about logistics. So why don't you tell us about what you think logistics are in terms of Applied Project?
Thank you, Melissa. Hello, everybody. Logistics is kind of an interesting word, so I wanted to find out where the derivation of it came from, and I looked it up because one can do that now. And it stems from the French word for lodging, or French logistique, from loger, to lodge. In other words, the organization of moving housing and supplying troops and equipment. That's what project management is. I think of it also as being sort of based on logic and logical and using common sense. Logistics is a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, and making sure all the pieces fit together smoothly is really the goal. So I often think it's good to start by thinking backwards. In other words, create, you know what your end ideal is, but let's think backwards from that. Create a really realistic timeline and be sure and pad it with extra time, because things often take longer. They get interrupted. There are hiccups, there are delays, there are dust storms, there are trucks don't show up on time, etc. Pad your timeline. Know when it is, when you need to have whatever it is, be it materials, tools, enough hands to do what needs to be done. Think in terms of possibly overbuilding and getting contingencies, thinking of if you think you can build something that's a ½ inch wide, but you really need it to be sturdier. Someone down the line might say, hey, that's not strong enough to hold up, whatever. think in terms of what's the maximum, how can you build it, you know, above and beyond what originally your idea is. This is, I think, one of the most interesting little topics, and I'm sorry I'm reading notes, but that's how I think. And by the way, having a 3-ring binder is your friend. Definitely use it, take notes. Really, you need to think about the maneuverability of what you're building. For instance, when you build it in some shop somewhere, do you think it'll fit through the doorway on the way out? Seriously, there are mistakes of that ilk. Then, important to think, can it be shipped or transported? And how do you do that? Does it come into pieces? Is there a way to make it sensible? What are the costs going to be for getting it to where it needs to go? Do you rent a box truck? Do you need to buy your very own shipping container? Find out how much that costs. You need to maybe hire a trucking company to put the shipping container on, and then have the equipment to lift the shipping container onto the truck, and both, you know, at the beginning and at the end, taking it off. You know, just basic, simple things. Something that Zach Coffin said earlier, yes, today, which I hadn't remembered. Know any restrictions of materials that are being shipped, such as firewood, that maybe shouldn't cross state lines and gets held up 3 states away from where you need it to be on a given day. So do your homework, figure out, you know, as many ramifications, because there's always going to be something that you hadn't thought of that's going to surface, but at least be as prepared as you can. Definitely have a plan for packing what it is you're doing, so it can be transported, including having a packing list, so that you know that in this box, written on the outside and written in your 3-ring binder, you actually know what's in that box, so you know what boxes to open first, what containers have what in them. It sounds really dull, but you'll be thanking yourself later, trust me. Something that Kay Radbush said to me yesterday, think in terms of what someone can reasonably actually pick up. I.e., is it too heavy for 1 or 2 or 3 people to move? And you're going to need some equipment to do that. And if so, you know, if you need a crane or a forklift, etc., make sure you think and understand about what the pick points are of the piece. Maybe having to create some kind of a jig to support it while you actually assemble it and install it. And definitely make sure that you plan to have the necessary equipment on site when you do so. Because otherwise you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. Or if you're not ready and the equipment is there, then they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs and you don't want to waste anyone's time. Definitely it's useful to understand how heavy equipment tools function, and make sure to have the proper and necessary straps or webbing or harnesses on hand. Think about safety third, of course. And then here's something that Mr. Hudson mentioned this morning that is a good reminder. Think in terms of long term. What are you going to do after the event? If you don't burn it and you want to take it back to civilization and possibly show it again, where are you going to store the damn thing? How much is that going to cost? That should be in your budget too. And just planning ahead. It's a matter of really using your common sense, thinking forward. Also, on that front, you should definitely have as much of a detailed budget in mind and do your very best to live within it. It's not always that easiest thing or the most creative or glamorous task, but it's absolutely essential for building a successful piece of art without ending up in the poorhouse. You know, I know people put their blood, sweat, and tears into making these pieces, and it takes a toll financially, physically, emotionally, whatever. But, you know, keep a budget in mind, and maybe even have an emotional budget in mind. You know, practical things, don't forget about insurance. Anything that requires insurance will require some sort of blueprints that have signed off on. So And most of us are trying to build big art, which means insurance will be involved. Because even if you're on the playa, you're going to have some kind of insurance. If you're off the playa, you're definitely going to have some kind of insurance. So make sure that you have something that will pass muster with the default world as well as our crazy Burning Man world. Always try and keep an overview of what your resources are, including your team of volunteers, which I know the other ladies on the panel will talk about a bit more. But have an overall backbone support structure for your team build, i.e. who's handling the tools, who's in charge of crew care. It makes it more efficient just for everybody to have a real overview. And really important, I think, is do your best to manage everyone's time well. You know, you've got these enthusiastic volunteers that are coming to help you, and they love the project, and they love you, or they want to get their hands dirty. But be prepared to delegate or assign tasks to anyone who's good enough to show up to help you. I mean, that's truly important. And if you're not exactly sure what to have them do when they show up, you know, a newbie, somebody that doesn't quite know things, have them shadow a more experienced team member. That way you're spreading the information, you're teaching. Next time they too show up, you've now got an extra person that knows a little more about the project, so they can share their information with another person, and it just kind of grows exponentially. I know we did that a lot with the Flux, and definitely on FLG, that's the way things go. Really important, always, always, always thank people for their efforts. It really helps build a sense of community, to feel like you're appreciated and a member of the team. And I know that it always, even if it's just in passing, thanks for that. Oh, that was great that you did that, or, you know, appreciate it. Any way you can thank them, it pays back in space, or whatever the expression would be. Another thing to do is to definitely be generous with sharing information about the project. The more people, and I work in the film industry, and I firmly believe this is important as well in that world, and they're very parallel universes. But the more people who have an understanding of the overall concept and the goal of what we're trying to do, and whatever the specific steps are to manifest it, that's all for the better. It makes sure that everyone's working towards the same end. Another idea is to maybe create some kind of a blueprint for the piece, as I mentioned earlier, including nomenclature, with names for the different parts of the piece. That way everyone understands the reference to a particular part. So on Temple of Flux, we created what we called thatches. And we created a system for creating them and palletizing them so that we could ship them. So that corner, that's where the thatches are getting built, and that's where they're getting stored, and this and that. So come up with your own names. And Flaming Lotus Girls, we call some things the trusses for Tiffany and Lovato have, for unknown reasons, the name of a space pigeon. You know, you can come up with any kind of a name, but make sure that everybody knows what the heck you're talking about. Very important, assign someone to be the tool master, to keep track of the tools. Make sure that that person is getting the tools back and returned to their proper place, so that next time that particular tool is needed, somebody doesn't have to spend 15, 20 minutes tracking it down. It's just efficient. But somebody really should be tool master, tool maestro, tool mistress, what have you. Non-gender specific. Make it happen. Post up any overall instructions about the shop. You know, like when you're leaving for the night, don't forget to lock up the tools and turn off the lights and take the trash out and sweep. Just getting folks in the habit of co-managing the workspace makes it easier for everybody. And, you know, many hands make light work, I've always believed. And I think that everybody pitches in, knows the drill, knows how to lock the lock is really useful. Now, this is something I know you're going to talk about a little bit, but make someone in charge of crew care, certainly during the build, because those are harsh conditions out there, but even at the shop when you're building it. You know, make sure that people are staying hydrated properly, they're out on the playa, have shade, sunscreen, taking breaks when they need to. it's easy to have a meltdown in the playa. We've all been there, we've all done it. And it's equally, that job of crew care is equally as important a job as any other on the team. You know, you may not be the ones up there on the crane hammering things, but you're making sure that the person that is doing that has been hydrated, will be up there safely, thinking clearly as best as can be up there, and that's just as important. When the first job I had in the film business, I got the coffee and the donuts, and honestly, being a PA, production assistant, it's a great way to learn from the ground up, but it's equally, I think, as important as being, you know, the DP, the gaffer, what have you. It's a team, and everybody has a part to play. Let's see. Safety. Make sure your team has all the proper safety attire. Do they have hard hats, gloves, safety glasses, steel-toed boots, earplugs, masks? Be sure and make sure that everybody should either provide their own, you provide for them, have backup. Things happen, somebody puts down their gloves and walks away, and the gloves go blowing off in the breeze. Have things, you know, think in terms of making sure everybody maintains a safety for them, their body. This is kind of an important thing, and I know it doesn't sound like you want to hear it, but really, there should be no alcohol drinking on the site. Seriously, it's an issue with your liability and your insurance. And it also, even if you're drinking a Tecate, which we all love to drink out there, do it after your shift, because it does affect you and your ability to think clearly, safely, etc. Definitely drink the right stuff until you get off work and then enjoy yourself. Then you can go to heavy equipment and get shit-faced. Keep in mind the environment that your piece will be inhabiting. Do you need to create any kind of safety perimeter, both during the build as well as during the event? And then if that's the case, plan to have caution tape or fencing of some kind on hand. I think that you want to always anticipate needs. I think that's the real crux of it. Anticipate needs. Think 3 steps at least ahead of what you're doing. Well, if we're doing this now, let's see, in an hour we'll be ready to do that, and 2 hours from now we'll be needing that. Plan ahead. Think in those terms. Have contingency plans, because things happen. You know, and be able to roll with those changes and be flexible, because you're going to need to be. Nothing ever quite happens in your mind's eye the way, you know, it is reality. Sorry, speaking up. Okay. Here's just one last thing to leave you with. Think and plan ahead for the wrap and the crew who's going to help you clean up at the end. Because, as you say, on the Monday, everybody's fried, and yet you have to leave that playa exactly how you found it. Leave no trace. So get people to commit to being there, make sure that they're ready to be there and in coherent enough space to do it. And most of all, enjoy yourself. You've just built a community. You've just built an amazing piece of art. It may go on to live somewhere else, hopefully. Hopefully it won't spend the rest of its life in a container somewhere. And enjoy it. Thank yourself. You know, you've created something beautiful and added to the world. There you go.
So speaking of that community, do you have particular strategies that you would recommend when maintaining that community from that project inception all the way through to that MBA cleanup that you might share with this group?
Well, firstly, I just want to say CATBIRD is amazing. What an incredibly practical, competent, inspiring way to make art. So I was like, yes! And I think community just builds, but Burning Man has this sense of volunteerism, and being a volunteer is an act of giving, right? That is what it is, and we give freely. And so, from my perspective, you know, when you have this community, I don't know how to make community. I don't know how the Flaming Lotus Girls made that, but I do know once it's there, you know, it's about motivating people. It's about, like CATBIRD said, being prepared, being practical. There's nothing worse than being in a busy shop and you have 10 people come in and they're like, we're ready. And you're like, I don't have anything for you to do because I forgot to buy the material, or I just don't know. So it's getting ready, it's being practical, it's being respectful, and also it's about empowering people. And so my favorite one is, I always start off small. So we have mostly a lot of women who come in, and for myself and maybe other women, it's really empowering because I've never done any metal work, done anything with fire. So it's really cool. But at the same time, I've never even like hammered a nail into a wall, so I don't know what I'm doing. So as a volunteer manager, the way I approach it is that you break down tasks into very small, repeatable things. So it's not like, how do you build a giant flaming serpent? It's like, how do you take this piece of steel and cut it 7 times into these lengths? And so as a volunteer manager, you rely on experts, right? You rely on technical experts to say, this is what I need done. And then I would literally go and find these people and train them, and then get them to do it 7 times. And then when they did it, I'd be like, great, now let's do it 100 times again. And so maybe that's not community, that's learning, but that's how you create like a kind of body of really, competent, trained artists. Is you start small, and then you reward people, right? Like, it's very rewarding, it's very empowering when you take someone who just walked into the shop, and then at the end of the night, they walk out and they're like, I totally know how to run the bandsaw, I know how to fix it when it breaks, I know when I drilled that hole wrong, right? And so you build upon that. And what I find is 2 things happen with volunteers. And it's kind of like a self-selecting process. Either they walk out of it that night and they're like, ugh, that was okay, these ladies are crazy. I think someone once came in and worked with us and they said, we were really nice but incompetent. And I think that actually, a lot of people have that feeling, so they don't come back, right? Because we're nice but incompetent. But some people walk out of there and they're on fire, and they're like, I just did this thing. It's really amazing. And it was a very small thing. We are not talking about building this thing. Very small task. And they come back. So that's maybe not about, maybe I didn't answer the question.
And you're not incompetent.
I loved it. No, that was actually so this is they were like, those ladies are so nice and incompetent.
So you've broken down the tasks into these little pieces, and then you infer that there's some self-selection of volunteers that happens, where some people, like, they're done after one night, and then there's some that stay. And so what do you do, how do you check in with those people that have decided to stay? So do you have some tips? Is it just like, okay, you're doing it, or is there something that happens naturally?
We seem to have a never-ending supply of emails that go around on the email list for Flaming Lotus Girls, and lots of threads of conversation about things. But as we call ourselves a do-ocracy, you just jump in and you do it. But everybody has a voice, has a say-so, is never put the kibosh on for saying this or that. Everybody's got their 2 cents and they add it in, and I think that is part of what makes our community strong in a lot of ways.
And also, I personally, over the last 7 or 8 years, have learned a lot about motivating people, and my own ways of checking in is when I was in the shop, which I'm no longer at, my job was just kind of to watch the shop and see how people are doing. And if people are struggling, you help them, not that I'm very good at helping them, but I'd be like, hey Jess, I'm getting these people to wire these things together, they just need help, they're not doing it well, or they don't know what they're doing. So you can help them by getting someone else a lead. You can also kind of slowly, and it sounds like a terrible thing, but over days and weeks, you can kind of watch someone thrive and set them to harder and harder tasks.
Well, do you want to do something different? And And when they say yes, you're like, okay, what do you want to do? And that question asked is not often asked. What do you want to do? We're in a world where often we're told so often, like, you do this, and you do this, and here's your task. And when you flip that on its head, you often kind of break, I don't want to say break that person, but you break the cycle that they're used to. Sometimes we have had very difficult people, and when it gets to a moment where it's like, is this person so difficult and so frustrating for the entire group that it's disrupting the entire group, and we can't fit them in? And there are times I have actually had to have some of those conversations, and they're heartbreaking, they're difficult, but I really keep in mind the thing that I'm trying to support is the whole of the group.
So you're the lead, and you're leading from behind a little bit, but coming from the support point of view, it sounds like you have to have sometimes these difficult conversations. What are some of the other things that a team that role takes on in your projects? In a duocracy. What does a lead do in a duocracy?
Well, I think, well, maybe I'll tell the story. So one day we started this project called the Serpent Mother, and we were trying to find leads and people to do things, and Pune just came over to me and said, how about you leading the technical portion? And I kind of went, I kind of know a little bit. I could do it, and it is about that little act. It's about noticing people who have leadership qualities. Maybe they haven't totally stepped forward in something, but there's a certain sense like it's a person who thinks about the bigger picture. It's the person who has concerns about the group. It's a person who's been there contributing and doing things. And sometimes it's about opening up the platform for them. Not everybody is open or understands that they have permission to be a leader. And sometimes you as one of the leaders of the group have to open that up for them. And it's your responsibility to sort of open that door. So it's about having those conversations of, I think you might be good at this. And just pointing somebody out. And they might not be the obvious person. And sometimes it's about taking a risk. And a big thing about what we all do is mistakes are okay. And like, you can step into this role, you can try it for a little while. If it doesn't work out, it's okay.
So for the new project managers here, like you've got this duocracy, but the piece has to be ready by Sunday night. So do you have any advice for the folks who may be just trying to figure this out about like how to, what's the button when it's time to like move into a different mode? What does that look like?
Panic? I think what we do is we do a lot of extreme calendaring. We fall in love with spreadsheets and calendars and all sorts of digital online tools. I don't know if Google understood what they were doing when they created online Google, the Drive with docs and spreadsheets. That's how we kind of manage this whole process. We have a ridiculous ecosystem of online tools that we are using at all times. And they all drive us crazy. There's too many of them. But that's how we're managing it. It's like we have drop dead dates. We have like, this week I think we're going to be doing this. If we do miss that, we try to reassess. And it really is like, it will happen. We've done this enough before that it's going to happen. And if you're new to it, it will happen. You're going to make something amazing. It's really sort of keeping your head down and keeping your eye towards kind of those little goals along the way. And celebrating those. I think that's important too, is like, hey, we just were able to engineer the first, interactive widget and it worked and it's gonna happen. And then you celebrate that, you show it off in front of the group, you do little kind of motivational things along the way like that.
That's awesome. So the audience is anxious for me to get to the open question answer thing, so I'll just, all of you have had successes, we've talked about failures and successes. I guess just for the
parting question before I open it up to the House. Do each of you or any of you have the equivalent of canaries in the coal mine, things, red flags that you look for when on a project that you correct for, and can you advise the newbies or people about those for me?
Yeah, when things go wrong. I think there's 3 things I look for. One of them is unhappiness. And emotional unhappiness is like a plague, and it spreads and it affects creativity and it affects safety. That's one thing. That's one canary. I think the other thing is you have, like Jess said, you have to set these big schedules, and then you have to start screaming and whining when we really are not hitting one of them. And I don't mean oh my God, it's Tuesday and we haven't done what we have said we were going to do, but you know, oh my God, we've only got 17 weeks left and no one has like chosen a design, and you start screaming and no one's finished designing this thing. You know, I think having a few important drop-dead dates really helps.
And sticking to them.
Yeah, so I don't know, what else what are the
Canaries,
other
Kat?
red flags?
I think what you just said are the right ones to think about. I can't think of one right now.
I'm actually guilty of ignoring the biggest red flag in the world, which the bookkeeper can tell you about, which is when are we actually going to run out of money? And I personally, I love seeing that red flag, and then I just close my eyes, and it drives her nuts because there's no money left.
Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll open it up to the audience now for questions, and because it's being recorded, I'll move over here, and if you have a question, you want to come up here and use this mic.
And can I please ask the panelists to repeat the question into the microphone so I can make sure and pick it up? Thank
so
you.
You don't want them to use this.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. I didn't make that connection.
So either repeat the question if you don't want to get up, or you can come up here and use this one. Okay.
Okay, I think I can carry a voice. So you're talking, and first of all, thank you, because I think some of your stuff is brilliant. You've got a long process of planning what you do and how you do it. And I've had experience with that, but then there's the Burning Man project. And the Burning Man project involves, in my case, people from all around the country, in some cases the world, and how you pull all those. I mean, it's almost like recreating a company every time you've got a project. I mean, there's a core group of people that are your go-to people. He or she is extremely qualified, competent, and knows you and the way you work. But then you've got so many people that are coming together for the first time, only time, once a year, for whether it be a week or a month or 6 weeks for some part of a project. Best advice in managing that, because you know, managing this part, I get. It's all of a sudden 50 people coming together that haven't worked together, so there's no knowledge that I know what he's like or I know what she's like. I've got to try and balance that.
So I guess the question was, how do you quickly organize a crew of people that have never worked together before?
Huge crew.
Huge crew.
Thank you.
But it might work for small crews too.
I think one of the key factors is you have either 1 or 2 really amazing volunteer coordinators, and you try to gather as much information. We had I thought it was a really great, wonderfully extensive question form that we had all the volunteers fill out. And you know, it asked questions like, do you have odd skills that you might think we need? You know, what are your sleeping habits? What are your work habits? Have you worked on other projects before? What were they? You know, just to try to get as much information about kind of what they've done, how they've done it. We also asked, like, what's your preference of communication? You know, do they like email? Do they like, you know, Skype or GChat? You know, we tried to have you know, online like video chats, so you can actually see people face to face. I don't know, all those kind of things we tried to do.
Can you share that form on,
I know.
online with the panelists?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
I think it's Lisa Sunday actually made it.
Peter?
Yeah, I just had a comment about what you were talking about having a big crew and how to get all the leadership and stuff. One of the first things you have to do, you have to get a commitment from your crew members saying, how often can you be here tonight if you know that you're going to be here once a week, twice a week, how many a day? And if they're not willing to commit, they're more of a burden than a help. And that's a big lesson that I've learned, is that if you bring people in and you're spending half your time teaching a new person a new skill, we already taught 12 people. It's not, they just have to be honest with them. So, you know what, you do not fit in. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of people that are willing to put in this amount of time to do it. And just frankly, it's like having a negative person. Because I'm not getting any work done, I'm teaching you. So there's 2 people down. So you really have to get a commitment from them really early. And I was blessed with the most wonderful volunteer coordinator, Maggie Monroe, who's not here. But
Is she busy this year?
yeah, she's a really good friend of mine. I don't know how good friends are now, but no, she's just absolutely amazing, and I credit her a lot for everything that happened. And another thing you were talking about communicating, having your Google Docs and all that stuff, you don't want too many people having access to that information, or it just becomes a clusterfuck. You really need someone to manage that really well and log everyone's hours.
Okay, so that was cut just for the sake of the camera. That was Peter Hudson making comments about having his volunteer manager access to online forms and also getting a commitment from crew. Is there a commitment from your crew before you train them up and too many people? Anybody have any comments to that? And then we have a question from the audience.
Actually, I would say Flaming Lotus Girls are very different. We have no commitment, and part of being the right volunteer coordinator is being able to put someone to work and get good work out of them, whether they came for 2 hours or every night. So, but it's different, you know, and you know, it is hard because people will come and learn and then leave, but that's just the way our group works, is we're okay with it. So yeah, it's just like.
Okay, there's a woman with the glasses, yes?
Yes.
That's you.
I'm wondering, in a follow-up about building community and not letting too much information or too much noise infiltrate the effort, how do you handle, or when do you decide to BCC everybody or have a group email? Because then, if you've got 50 volunteers and people start replying all about things that don't involve other people, the chatter can make people not only distracted but irritated. And I wonder how you make those decisions.
So how do you set up communication? What are the rules around the dissemination and then the talk back?
Well, I'm not exactly sure if we have rules about it, but actually what FLG has done recently is work with something called Threadables, and that creates, if you're a geek person, there's a Threadables for the geeks. If there's, we're putting a proposal together for a new project, there's just that kind of crowd. And if it's something that you have to be included and added onto that list to receive those emails, but if it's something that perhaps should go out to the whole list, then that gets out to the whole Flaming Lotus Girl list, which we have Flaming Lotus Girls all over the world. Australia, England, Canada probably, here, there, everywhere. I mean, there are, Texas, we've got Flaming Lotus Girls all over the world.
And you CC, you don't BCC, so
You just happens. Yeah, it sort of happens. And, you know, some people on their end decide to get a daily digest, and so they're just seeing it one time a day, you know. So, but if you're crazy enough like I am to see it come in as it comes in, you know, oodles of emails, possibly daily.
Yeah, I would say email list or your friend. We have one where we have like just the general flux list. It's just our general purpose for when projects are happening or work days are happening. We encourage anybody who wants to post there something that's related to put an OT in the subject line. And then, yeah, off topic. And then we have a separate admin list, which is kind of the chatter about kind of high level, just coordination stuff that doesn't really need to clog up the email list. We might give a synopsis to the main list. And then for each project, we break off a separate email list. And anybody can be on it, and we try to, relate important information to the main list. But we just try to be conscious of people's inboxes.
Okay, question
I
here.
actually just wanted to make a statement to players about how you manage large crews and you're doing this, people are all coming together at one point. As much as you want to encourage volunteerism and being part of Flux, that's the #1 thing that we do. It's also important to recognize, respect, and handle mastery. And what I mean by that is, you don't need 17 massage therapists on your milk crew. And as much as they want to be part of it, you're like, I'm so grateful you brought your healing stones with you. Can you pick up that impact driver? Because you don't want to discourage people because they can only bring what they can bring. But you kind of have to listen to the crew and the people as you're going. And when we did the temple, we really walk out there and close your eyes and be like, one ear, you hear a guy go, tak, 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 tak. Like, that guy does that all day long. And then, oh, gee, sorry. You're like, hey, do you like paint? I love paint. So
I think
you listen. You have to listen to the mastery and let the mastery dictate where your volunteers get placed and how it works best.
It's the challenge is that it just builds to this crescendo in a very short period of time, and again, they haven't worked together. It's not like a well-oiled machine. Afterwards, after the project's over, they could go and start again and do another one, and you'd be great because you know everyone's strengths and weaknesses. But at the beginning, year after year, it's like suddenly you're throwing together people that haven't worked together in a year, even if they did work together a year ago.
I think it's also important to talking about how people become part of the crew at the get-go. I remember we had morning meetings every day with the whole crew assembled, and that's when everybody would hear what the challenges of the day were, what we were trying to do. But it was also a forum and an opportunity for people to come together and meet. And I mean, you can do breakdowns. When we have our Wednesday night meetings for Flaming Lotus Girls, a lot of times we'll ask a question, go around the circle and say, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And it just breaks the ice. And it's making sure that people understand that the person standing next to them that they've never known is now a new friend to be had, and facilitating that happening by putting things on a personal level. You're not just there to build art. You're there to create, a wonderful experience for everybody, and that means making friends. Question over here.
I'd like to put a kind of concept forward, have you guys answer. It seems to me the idea of a basic project embroidery gives a lot of options. So if you have a basic project and you know that if you're running out of time and money and whatever, you can stick to that. But if you suddenly have more time and money, you can embroider it. Or if you suddenly have more volunteers, there's something, you can kind of like leave an area for further embroidery if time and energy permits.
Because of the way Burning Man art grants work, and we typically find out in March or April what we're doing. And so for us, I wish we had that time for knowing that actually we have the resources, but really it's like a horse race or a car race, and we're going as fast as we can, and we throw shit away as fast as we can to make it. But then the year after that is when we'll come back to a piece, and that's when we're like, now we have the time, the money, the resources to do that embroidery. But I've never had the luxury of being able to do that in the space that we're building the piece of art.
Just for the sake of the panelists, can you raise your hand if you're here and managing a project or working on a project for the first time? Okay. And can you raise your hand if you're a seasoned or experienced project manager and you're looking for tips from our panelists? Okay. And the rest of you, can you raise your hand if you're just here for fun? That gives you a little flavor.
Quick question. My first project was in 2013, and I started off with not having a project manager, and I was doing it all by myself. And then eventually I had to find somebody. So I'm not, with doing big projects, is it, I mean, that's a crucial position to have that one person that's delegating and doing all because I ended up not, handling like 200, a list of like 200 things that I had to solve and make sure that was, taken care of. But even now, as bringing another piece back, the project manager and the artist, like how much do they still do the same jobs together, I guess is kind of the question. Or do you just like give everything up to the project manager and like how do you manage, if I'm the artist, how do I let the other person do their jobs?
I often think it works best when we say, I'm going to give this up. It is the hardest thing to do. Control is really hard to give away. And I think it's one of the smartest things you can ever do. That's why I call Prince. No.
Do you still like overlook what they're doing though?
Yeah, I think what it is you have like, meetings where you sit down and go, okay, what's on the docket? Here's some important things that are coming up to me. But this project manager, like, their role is to get it done. And by taking stuff on or trying to, go like, that's still mine, you're getting in their way.
Okay.
And you're actually like stopping their efficiency.
It's also our art too. That's our artistry as project managers. Like, get out of my way. Like literally, I pulled her and Rebecca Adams off the temple, unhooked them from their thing. I was like, go talk to media, go talk to the art, get off your project.
Do you have the artist actually communicate with Artery as well, or would you have the project manager?
I mean, we can get into the minutia of that. I mean, that's what it is. Jess and I have a term that we use when we need heavy equipment in Artery, but we're not going to say here, but we said her or me. And
yeah, because I was doing that the whole time, and sometimes I just wasn't on playa at the build site as much as I should have been, and just running back and forth, so I just wasn't, for next time it's like, how to plan ahead,
Yeah, I think as the artist you're trying to, like, where do the assets you have for the project that nobody else can do?
Right.
Like, you know your project intimately, you know how to talk about it, you know where the concept came from. You should be taking on those roles. Project manager knows how it all goes together and what things need to be done when. And that's their role, and they do that the best. And you really just, try not to repeat. It is hard. I'm guilty of it all the time. But you got to step out of the way and sort of allow for somebody else to be empowered to do it.
You could also be the artist and the project manager at the same time, right?
Can you?
Depends on the size of the project and crew.
Absolutely. But also the project managers don't know what they're getting themselves into when they sign up to work on the project with me. And I'm very demanding, and I've got things that need to get done. And once I ask somebody to get done, I don't want to think about it again. And unfortunately, a lot of times I got to come back and check, hey, is that done? Is that done? And so what I have learned to do is to subdivide that project manager. Don't dump everything on one person. They're just going to get completely overwhelmed, pull out their hair, hate your guts. They might quit. So what I've done is divided project management into different sectors and have different project managers have different components of the piece, which I have my piece. Well, I think Flame Road scores the same way, a lot of different components. And that's what works best for me. I'm the ultimate project manager. I just kind of oversee everything. But I think the best job that I invented was the artery liaison. So I never have to go to the artery, talk to the artery. That's someone else's job to do that. Because that can be a big energy suck. And dealing with big heavy equipment, with all those resources, So I've got one person that's just their job from now, day one, starting today. They deal with Burning Man. I don't talk to Burning Man.
So that was, so Peter said he's, just for the camera, he divides his project manager up into 3 project managers. It's Planarian, the project manager. He's like sitting here, did I sit in gross back?
I'm sorry,
And then he also says that he creates a position or on his team that is the artery liaison, and that's a job on Peter's team. You guys, do you have thoughts or comments about Peter's remarks?
Yes, we definitely have an artery liaison, a few of them. I remember Jess, you were at 1 year, we have a few of them. Because on the playa, it's just very time consuming. Literally the act of going to the artery and coming back will take like 2.5 hours and you've got a whole crew building, so it has to be a separate person. Just going back to that artist thing, I want to make one comment which is unique to Flaming Lotus Girls, which is every year we make one piece of art. There's always a single artist who originally came up with that idea, and then this single artist has this experience, which is, I mean, most people say it's a life-changing experience, but it's enough to break them and make them weep, because it's one person's artistic vision that 150 people are making, and we don't make what the artist wants to make. And so you see these artists. Yeah, it does. And so they learn how to pick their battles and choose like what is the most important part of their artistic vision, and what they can also be like, it's okay. You're doing something different, maybe because what they want is not physically capable, or we don't have enough money, or whatever. But it's a very unusual thing, and so I wish you know, you had one of these artists here who could tell you about that quite unique experience. I think Jess, you probably know more than most people what that feels like.
I guess, yeah, there's Utopia.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's unique in even Flux and Flaming Lotus Girls is that the concept comes from 1 to 2 lines, but then it's gifted to the group. And it's never listed with your name. It's under, like, the byline says by, you know, Flux, by Flaming Lotus Girls. And that's really important because everybody in that volunteer group owns that piece. It is theirs. They can walk out in the world and say, this is my art.
Pretty amazing. Questions? Comments?
I mean, what Peter said, I have a hard time with the whole concept of giving control to the project manager. And I get it, and this is why I'm here, is actually listening as an artist who's created multiple pieces and saying, okay, it's getting bigger, it's more complicated. But there's a part of me waking up in the morning and deciding this is the way I want to go. And I know project management is looking at it from efficiency and safety. And it's not that I don't want to be efficient, and I don't want to be, and I do want to be safe. But the fact is, I do have a vision of where I want the piece to go. And so I guess I'm not sure I buy into everything of just trying to let them do all of that.
I think we're kind of talking apples and oranges here. There's different ways that pieces get built. There's artists that come up with an idea, and then get people to build that piece. And then there's organizations that have artists step forward to design the piece. They're kind of like 2 different entities. So neither one of them is necessarily the right or the wrong way. They're just different ways of coming at making the piece.
I think that's absolutely astute and correct. And having worked both now with organizations where it's a kind of a group collaborative thing versus working with Peter, who's the pinnacle of what the concept is. They are 2 different ways of working. Both of them are great and valid, and you just have to acknowledge and,
Just like the movie being made, we have the...
Right, you have a director, you've got a producer.
Sometimes it's like Woody Allen, it's the writer, the director, he does everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an executive producer that brings in the whole different ways of making the same thing happen.
Yes, but...
You start out with a toy. Transformers.
Right, yeah, so there, I think you can go at it from a variety of different angles. but both of them are valid. And, you know, figure out what works best for your situation. You have to be flexible, you have to sort of say, wait a minute, this isn't exactly working. Let me rethink how to do this. You know, and yes, it's fantastic you would get up and be enthused in the morning about, this is what I want to do. Figure out a way to imbue that with, you know, that concept to whomever it is that you're willing to delegate a little bit of it to.
I agree.
So we're going to have to wrap up soon. Is there one more question?
Yeah, so I've heard us talk about spreadsheets and Google Docs and so forth. Is there a software, for example, Asana? Do you find that organizes? There's Gantt charts, you know, like the Microsoft Office project, but is there any one central format that seems to work well for everyone?
Is there some electronic magic smoke that still says
I think the one that is most shareable. So the reason why Google Drive is what is used is because it's on the internet. It's not like, oh, you don't have that program, you don't, you know. It's like a big downfall when I get, you know, a CAD drawing sent to me and I'm like, you know, I'm on my iPhone most of the time, you know, like, you know, can you shrink that and put that, you know, in a JPEG, you know? So I think the most transferable information that it can be most universal, online, and can get to a massive amount of people at the most basic level is what you want. You know, something that everyone can open where they've got a fax machine to a, you know, to a PC or a Mac or whatever. I mean, that sounds kind of basic, but that's why Google Drive is so, you know, efficient, because everyone can just log on online anywhere on any kind of machine and you have the information.
Okay, ladies, any parting shots? Jess?
Well, one thing I was thinking about it, kind of, that the biggest asset in every single project, and I think sometimes even more important for me, are the people making it. And that they're really your asset. So even though like you have an agenda and like this piece is going forward, you have this wonderful group of people that are along the journey with you. And that's really, often like if I'm stuck and like, you know, digging my heels in, I have to remember that they're the most important thing in this process.
The whole building big art, I mean, part of the reason I do it is because I like being part of a big community. And I know it was absolutely transformative to work for the first time on a really big piece, the Temple of Flux in 2010. And of the 200 people that were on that crew, it's still a community 5 years down the road. People love each other. We've had 2 babies born, you know, at least 2, right? Maybe 4, I don't know. I'm not keeping up. But there were probably more there.
This is a project management.
It's the sense of community.
9 women, 1 baby, you know.
And for me, one last thing I would say is that the group is stronger than its individual components, and that's amazing. I've personally done so much stuff, but it's not me, it's the group, it's us, and that is amazing. So together we can make amazing art.
All right, well, thank you so much.